Ben, Helen's adored husband, abandoned her for a young, jovial paramedic named Trudy before she turned 35, leaving her alone. After graduating from medical school, Trudy had come to their community with her sights set on a married father of 2 kids. Ben was tall, good-looking, and a country veterinarian. As a result, they grew close when discussing the topic of treating humans and animals. Helen jumped up and begged Ben not to go as he announced he was going. How was she going to survive without him? Together, they had 2 children, Susan, age 3, and Peter, age 5. Ben, however, continued to say the same thing. Although he would assist and not desert their kids, Trudy was his genuine love. So he took off with only 1 suitcase. After that, he and his new wife relocated to a nearby district. Helen sobbed uncontrollably before gathering herself. Her children shouldn't have seen their mother sobbing all the time. She was able to smother that love in her heart, even though she loved him more than life itself. She became their mother and father, worked, and looked after the kids. Ben had made many promises, but he only followed through on them verbally. He only sent modest alimony and never once saw his son or daughter in the 10 years since he left his family. Even though he resided just 100 kilometers from the village where his old family lived, he didn't even send the kids birthday cards. At first, the kids wailed for their father, but they eventually adapted. Helen also adapted to living without male assistance. During the planting and harvesting seasons, she worked in the farm cafeteria. In the winter, she worked on the farm. She made every effort to make sure her kids had all they needed. She stopped looking at males. She now viewed them as a source of betrayal and suffering. Work, home, and kids all become robotic for Helen. That was the end of it. No private life, no happiness. Nonetheless, she took pleasure in observing her children's development and academic success. The most significant aspect of her life was that. However, Helen would occasionally weep at night over her destroyed femininity. Nobody would give her a hug or a cuddle. However, the tears vanished in the morning as she hurried back to work before returning to her kids. In addition to cooking, cleaning, and sewing, she also assisted them with their schoolwork. Despite her natural aptitude for arithmetic, she was unable to make a career out of it. Because they were impoverished, her parents were unable to pay for her education. After that, she married. For the most part, things went as planned. Then came the bad news. Helen found out that Trudy and Ben had passed away. While operating a service vehicle, they were struck by a train at a railroad crossing. Helen sobbed with her kids. She felt sorry for Ben, even though they hadn't seen him in a while. And Trudy surely didn't deserve such a terrible fate, even though she was a homewrecker. Helen even made the decision to attend the funeral. However, she later learned that Ben and their daughter would be buried in the city where Trudy's aging parents resided. Helen also discovered that a daughter had been left behind by Ben and Trudy. At the moment, she was 10 years old. Trudy's parents couldn't take her in. They were both sick, barely able to walk, and other relatives apparently refused to be involved. Ben's sister, who had approved of her brother leaving Helen, immediately declared that she had 4 children of her own to feed and wouldn't be able to take in her niece. In short, after the funeral, they planned to take Amanda to an orphanage. Upon learning of this, Helen became pensive and distracted. She cooked in the canteen, and because of her deep thoughts, she either poured more salt than necessary or even sugared the potatoes once. At first, the director scolded her, but then she realized something was troubling Helen. She asked, and Helen spilled everything. "I can't get Amanda out of my head. I understand that she's a stranger to me, but she's Ben's daughter, and I loved him. Yes, I forced myself to forget, or at least I thought I did, but my heart still aches when I remember him. And when I think about what he had to endure in his last moments, I feel sorry for him to the point of tears. There's no anger. And now, this little girl. Can you imagine losing both parents at once? And her relatives don't want her." "Helen, what are you thinking?" The director scolded. "Don't be foolish. What do you need this girl for? You have to raise your own children. Peter will finish school in a couple of years, and then he'll need to study further. And Susan is growing up too. I understand all that. But I feel sorry for the girl, Helen answered, lowering her head. And then she made a decision. She went to the neighboring district, found out everything, and saw Amanda. Her grandparents were still watching over her. The old people were crying because they couldn't take the girl with them to the city. They could barely walk. It was a good thing that kind people helped with their daughters' and son-in-law's funerals, but they couldn't afford to take care of their granddaughter. When they found out who Helen was, they were confused. Why did she want this? But Helen simply said, "Amanda is my children's sister. How can I abandon her?" Trudy's parents were amazed, and then they thanked the woman warmly for saving their granddaughter from an orphanage. Amanda turned out to be a sweet girl, well-mannered and quiet. She cried a lot about her dead parents. Helen comforted her as best she could and promised her that everything would be fine. She would get to know her brother and sister, and the pain would fade away. And Amanda trustingly hugged the woman. Helen didn't try to become her mother. She was just a good friend to the lonely girl. But her 15-year-old son, Peter, and 13-year-old daughter, Susan, didn't like their little sister. They saw her only as the one who had taken their father away from them. Helen scolded them in vain when Amanda was not there. "I was able to forgive the offense, and Amanda is not to blame for anything. So please stop treating her so badly. She is your sister." But her own children were like deaf. Then they developed a new tactic. They started to pretend that Amanda didn't exist. If they sat down to eat without their mother, they didn't call Amanda to the table, shooed her away from the TV, and didn't call her by name. Susan, who shared a room with Amanda, even drew a line that she was not allowed to cross. And if she did, Susan would rough up her little sister. Amanda didn't complain to Helen. The girl thought it was still better than being in an orphanage, which she had heard so much about before. Helen saw that her own children didn't accept the girl, but she hoped that everything would be okay soon. After all, time heals and adds wisdom. But time passed, and nothing changed. Peter had already finished school and gone to the city to study to be a car mechanic. Susan had grown up and dreamed of becoming a doctor after school. Helen supported her children in their aspirations, and she didn't forget about Amanda. She tried to pay more attention to her, and her own children didn't seem to notice that their mother was torn between them and this stray, as they called Amanda among themselves. Susan kept a watchful eye on her younger sister, ensuring she didn't take her things or cosmetics. When Helen moved Amanda into Peter's old room, Susan breathed a sigh of relief. Amanda tried to stay out of Susan's sight. It was quieter that way. Peter seemed to be all grown up, but sometimes he acted like a wicked child. Once he came for Christmas and brought small gifts for his mother and sister, a scarf for Helen and cosmetics for Susan. Amanda was sitting at the dining table, lowering her eyes so that it wouldn't be obvious that she also would like to get a gift. Peter looked at her and smiled mysteriously. "What are you sitting there for, little one?" he chuckled. "I have something for you too." And he pulled out a large chocolate bar from his suitcase. Helen couldn't afford to buy plenty of sweets for the children, and if she did, it was something simpler. But this chocolate bar was simply huge. Amanda's face lit up. She smiled and timidly took the treat. "Thank you," she whispered gratefully. "You're welcome," Peter answered jokingly and smiled again. Susan looked at her brother in bewilderment. How could he be so generous to this little pest? Had he gone crazy? "Let's eat it together with tea," Amanda exclaimed joyfully and unwrapped the chocolate bar. Looking at what was inside, her face immediately changed, tears glistening in her eyes. Helen, seeing what was in the rustling foil, paled with indignation. Peter, her adult son, had decided to tease Amanda. Inside the wrapper was a neatly rolled rectangular piece of tar. "Peter, what kind of joke is this?" Helen protested. "Are you out of your mind? What's wrong?" Her son replied, barely holding back laughter. "It's good tar. I barely got it from the boys at the construction school. Look how evenly I rolled it out. Now Amanda doesn't need any gum. It will last her a month." He and Susan burst out laughing and ran into her room, where Peter treated her with the chocolate bar he had brought. Amanda sat there silently in the kitchen, tears dropping onto the pseudo-chocolate. "Fools," Helen scolded. "Just fools? Don't cry, my dear. I'll buy you another one, even better." And she did, a little later. Then in the spring, Amanda's maternal aunt, Julia, suddenly showed up. Julia was already in her 50s, had no children or husband, worked as a seamstress, and lived in the capital. She knew nothing about Amanda. But then she met some relatives who told her about Trudy's daughter. By then, Trudy's parents were no longer alive, and Julia felt sorry for the girl. How was she living with her father's ex-wife? This woman was probably teasing the orphan girl, taking out her anger on the defenseless child. Imagining this, Julia found Helen's address and visited her. And she almost immediately realized she had been wrong. Helen loved Amanda and took care of her like her own daughter, but Helen's children. So Julia offered to take Amanda with her. At first, Helen refused, and Amanda was against it too. She was used to her stepmother and even loved her. As for the way Peter and Susan behaved towards her, Amanda tried not to pay attention. But Julia persuaded both of them that it would be better for the girl to live in the capital. Better education, a spacious 3-room apartment, museums, libraries, parks. Julia was alone, and the loneliness was driving her crazy. With Amanda, they would live well together. The main thing was that the girl would be safe and happy. "Please understand," Julia told Helen when Amanda left the room. "I want to help you. I understand how torn you are. You love your children and Amanda. You forgave your husband, didn't you? But your children haven't forgotten the offense, and they will take out this anger on Amanda all her life. All 3 of them are unhappy because of this." "Maybe you're right." Helen nodded thoughtfully. "I sometimes think that I'm not doing something right. I love all 3 of them, and they're like enemies to each other, even though they're related by blood. They will understand with age, both Peter and Susan, that they were wrong. And now let's decide something. Otherwise, trouble may not be far. Amanda is entering puberty. It's unknown how she will react to the next attack from her brother and sister. And I'm scared," Helen admitted. "And if you think about it, Peter and Susan are closer to me, of course, but I'm ashamed in front of Amanda. I promised her that I wouldn't give her to anyone. And it turns out that I lied." "You didn't lie. It just didn't quite work out. It happens. And Amanda will be fine with me. We just need to convince her to go with me. I'm attached to her very much, although she's the daughter of a woman who had broken my family," Helen sobbed, wiping away tears. The women didn't notice that Amanda was standing behind the door and heard everything. The girl understood how difficult it was for Helen to choose between her and her own children, and Amanda wisely decided not to torment her second mother anymore. After all, no matter how you look at it, her presence would always remind Helen of her husband's betrayal, and Peter and Susan would calm down. It was better to communicate at a distance. That same evening, Amanda said she would go with Julia. Helen cried, hugging the girl who had become dear to her over this time, and the girl cried, promising to write letters and that they would definitely see each other again. Peter and Susan finally breathed a sigh of relief that they had finally fused this stray. Years went by, and Susan left her mother long ago. She graduated, as she had dreamed, as a doctor. She and her brother lived in the city, each with their own families and jobs. They came to their mother's house for the holidays. Amanda didn't get lost either. She often wrote to Helen and even came to visit her from the capital. Julia, as promised, raised Amanda with love and care. Amanda graduated as a fashion designer. Now she had her own atelier and she got married. She even established communication with Peter and Susan, but only at a distance. They called each other and congratulated each other on holidays. Time passed. Helen didn't notice how she aged. Now she was 80. It was hard for her alone in the village, but she was used to it. And she didn't complain. She shuffled around the house slowly but surely. And then Peter arrived. He looked thoughtful and unhappy. Helen immediately sensed that something was wrong with her son and asked him directly what was bothering him. Peter admitted that he had some problems. Recently, Tom, my son, got married, and we all live together in my 2-room apartment. The young couple needs their own space. You understand them, especially since Julia, Tom's wife, is pregnant. I don't know how we can all continue to live together. My wife is nervous. Tom takes any job he can get. And I never leave the auto repair shop, but we still don't have enough money for a down payment to take out a mortgage. Peter paused for a moment and continued, Mum, I was thinking, maybe we could sell your house. But where will I live, my son? The elderly woman asked, confused. Oh, Mom, we won't abandon you. Peter exclaimed, We'll take you with us. You'll stay in Tom's room. They will move to their place after getting a mortgage. Oh, I don't know, son. Helen shook her head. I'm afraid to leave my own home. And what will Susan say? She'll be upset that she didn't inherit anything from her mother's home. Why should Susan be upset? Peter shrugged. She has an apartment with her husband, a car, a country house. They have good salaries. They've already bought an apartment for their daughter, and not with a mortgage. Susan is living the good life while I've been working hard my whole life. What's the point of helping her? Helen felt so sorry for her firstborn, and she decided to help. What else did she have left? She would live with her son until the end, and they wouldn't hurt her. They were all family. The house was sold quickly, and Helen was moved to the city. Her daughter-in-law, Rosanna, seemed to welcome her warmly. Live and be happy, Mum, she cried. No need to light a fireplace to warm up the house or shovel snow. See how good everything is. At first, Helen was pleased. She had settled in comfortably and had helped her grandson. He took out a mortgage and bought an apartment in just 2 days, and he and his wife moved. Great. Susan, however, was a little upset that such a decision had been made about her mother without her. Since you've decided that way, she told her mother angrily, then live with them. But if Rosanna drives you out, don't even think about coming to me. I don't have a place for you. I'm telling you right now. Why would she drive me out, dear daughter? Helen smiled. I helped them. I'm sorry you didn't get anything from me. Is that why you're upset? Oh my God, I don't need your money. Susan rolled her eyes. You just don't know your daughter-in-law well. But remember that I won't be able to take you in if anything happens. You'll go to a nursing home, said Susan. And as if she had hit her mother with these words, Helen shut it. She didn't deserve to hear that. A month passed. 2, 6 months. And it turned out Susan was right. Rosanna began to change before her eyes. She reproached her mother-in-law for shuffling loudly, dropping crumbs when she ate, and watching soap operas. She was angry that an elderly woman became disorderly and sometimes broke the dishes, and that she had to help her in the bathroom. The daughter-in-law would scold and insult her mother-in-law, calling her smelly and sloppy. The son never stopped his wife, only averting his eyes, and then Helen would cry in her room from the hurt. She had helped her children, but they forgot her kindness. Neither her son nor daughter-in-law asked for forgiveness. And soon Peter suggested, Mom, how about a nursing home? Everyone would be happier that way. It's nice there. They provide food and care, and you'll have company. Maybe you'll even get remarried. There are men there too. Helen's heart sank with bitterness. What men? She asked her son. I never thought about that when I was young. I was too busy raising you and your sister. Why do I need all this now? She's still arguing, the daughter-in-law, who was also present at the conversation, exclaimed. Nobody's really asking you anyway. Let's just pack her things and take her there. I'm so tired of all this. I can't take it anymore. Helen didn't say anything. She just cried. Her son and Rosanna left her without even acknowledging her tears. They started looking for a nursing home, and Susan was tasked with it too. She stormed over to her brother's house one Sunday. Helen was in her room and didn't come out, but she heard everything. When you took in our mother, you should have thought ahead. Susan yelled. You wanted the apartment for your son. You have to live within your means. I told you and Mother that I wouldn't take her in. I have a job. I need to relax at home, and Andrew won't agree. You know he's a talented surgeon. He needs to be at peace at home. I've checked 2 nursing homes, the brother replied apologetically, but we can't get into the state-run ones. We can go to a private nursing home. A private one? Susan exclaimed. Have you seen the prices there? Mother's pension isn't enough. Are you going to pay, or should I? I have my own expenses. My daughter is studying abroad. What are we supposed to do then? The brother shrugged. I have an idea, Susan said, lowering her voice. Helen didn't hear what they talked about, nor did she want to. The tears were choking her. She found herself unwanted in her old age. Is this what she had raised her children for? Susan, her brother, and Rosanna whispered to each other, made an agreement, and left on a good note. Her daughter never came to say goodbye. The next day, Peter told his mother to get ready. For the nursing home? Asked the elderly woman, her voice trembling. Yes, Peter replied, dropping his eyes. There was nothing to do. The elderly woman gathered her humble belongings. Her son took her out of the house, put her in Susan's car, and the 3 of them drove somewhere. Helen no longer cried. She had resigned herself. Maybe it would be better there, in the nursing home, more peaceful. She did not have much time left. Helen even fell asleep in the car, and when she opened her eyes, she was horrified. They had arrived at the cemetery. Son, daughter, where have you brought me? Cried the mother. I'm still alive. Mom, live as long as you want, Susan replied indignantly, not even turning around from the wheel. We found you a good home. Here, in the cemetery. It's a guardhouse. You can even live there in the winter. There's a stove and all the amenities. What kind of amenities can there be here? Helen objected, wiping away her tears. Mum, don't be capricious, her son replied from the front passenger seat. You've lived like this in the village all your life. You can do it here too. Besides, you'll have an assistant, the cemetery guard. He lives right there. A good elderly man. He agreed to look after you for a small fee. Her daughter continued. And also, Mum, don't be offended, but I'll keep your pension card. I'll use it to pay the guard and bring you food. Hearing all this, Helen trembled. Her own children were going to throw her away like garbage. At that moment, the guard approached the car. He turned out to be a shabby-looking man, clearly fond of hitting the bottle. Well, where's the old lady? He croaked, peering into the car. Ah, there she is. Well, hello, Granny. Let's go get acquainted. He laughed so hard that all 3 in the car shuddered. Nevertheless, the son and daughter pulled their mother out of the car and led her toward the guardhouse. The elderly woman was so horrified that she couldn't feel her legs. Suddenly, someone called out to them at the gate. They turned around and saw a slim, pretty, and stylishly dressed woman in her 40s. Helen, is that you? The woman exclaimed in surprise. Peter? Susan? What's going on here? Amanda, exclaimed Helen. What are you doing here? I came to visit my parents' graves, and then I was going to visit you in the village. What's all this about? It's none of your business. Susan screamed and tried to pull her mother away. But somehow, Helen broke free from her daughter and son's tight grip, ran up to Amanda, and told her what was happening. Did you bring our mother here to live? Amanda whispered in horror, looking at Peter and Susan. To a cemetery? To an unknown man? Who are you after that? She's our mother, and it's our right to decide where she lives, Peter replied arrogantly. And you, stray, don't tell us how to live. And I won't, Amanda replied shortly and waved to someone in an expensive car. The driver, a tall, stout guy, got out of the car. As soon as Susan and Peter saw him, they immediately backed away. The guard ran back to his booth. Amanda hugged Helen and led her to the car. You're coming with me, Helen, Amanda said firmly. You'll live with me. By the way, meet my son, Philip, your grandson. The guy smiled warmly. Amanda. What? Why do you need me? Helen asked, confused. After all, I couldn't give you everything you needed in your time. You gave me the most important thing, your love, Amanda cried. When no one needed me, you saved me, and I won't abandon you. As for Peter and Susan, God will judge them for everything, and don't ever blame yourself for giving me to Aunt Julia. She gave me love and care. But you gave me the most important thing, an understanding that it's essential to know how to forgive. My dear girl, Helen cried, and those were tears of joy.